Aristotle is just saying that we know the information from our five senses better or best, and that it causes our other knowledge. But could someone somehow delusionally hold the view that the five senses are our best and better knowledge, and that therefore all other knowledge is totally invalid? That, I think, is empiricism. Now, a man cannot believe in anything more than in the things he knows, unless he has either actual knowledge of it or something better than actual knowledge. Now, this, I think, is a meaningful statement where Aristotle asserts that you can't know something to be true unless you know it from and down to the five senses. Up from and back down to. That is knowledge. Anything else, he says, is not necessarily knowledge. Now, if that's the case, then you can't say you believe something unless you know it. You might suspect it as true, you might accept it as true, but you can't believe it to be true unless you know it to be true, according to his distinctions here. So people who know and believe in God, a phenomenon that can never be brought down to the five senses, know and believe something in their own delusional, fantastic world, but nowhere else. Continuing. But we are faced with this paradox. If a student whose belief rests on demonstration has not prior knowledge, a man must believe in some, if not all, of the basic truths, more than in the conclusion. Now, I think we've visited that thoroughly. Moreover, if a man sets out to acquire the scientific knowledge that comes through demonstration, he must not only have a better knowledge of the basic truths and a firmer conviction of them than of the connection which is being demonstrated. More than this, nothing must be more certain or better known to him than these basic truths in their character as contradicting the fundamental premises which lead to the opposed and erroneous conclusion. For indeed, the conviction of pure science must be unshakable. Right? Science has to start with something unshakable and proceed from there and never leave off that unshakable base. That is the definition of science, isn't it? Some hold that, owing to the necessity of knowing the primary premises, there is no scientific knowledge. Did I just predict empiricism? Now, let me put the cards on the table. I've actually read, a way up above ahead of this. I've already gone over this and made extensive little notes in the margins and stuff. So, it's kind of putting you on. But here he says right in the open, empiricism is this. Well, he doesn't name it this. He says right in the open, there are those people who hold no scientific knowledge is possible because we have to know the primary premises. Others think there is, but that all truths are demonstrable. So they hold, yes, scientific knowledge is possible, we can demonstrate through dialectics, but you can even demonstrate the truth of the axioms. These people hold that. So an integration of the two things in reality would show that there are some truths that are not demonstrable, those are the axioms, from which all demonstrable truths have to flower. So an integration shows us axioms from which non-obvious truths follow, and one of them holds that all truths have to be obvious or rejected, and the other holds that all truths have to be provable or rejected. But they both have a non-integrated view. They both picked one side or the other. In actuality, the intrinsism and subjectivism are both out. The intrinsism would be the one that focuses on some reality, some super reality, some five senses reality, or some other reality they get to somehow, but where reality sets the terms. That's intrinsism. Subjectivism is the other side of that coin, where everything is non-reality. It's all provable, and it ends up being circular. So, two sides of the same counterfeit coin. So some people hold that because we have to know the axioms, the five senses, no scientific knowledge is possible. Others hold that scientific knowledge is possible, but that we can give a scientific demonstration of everything, including the axioms. And that's why they don't hold the axioms as true, because you can't demonstrate them. So they say we have to prove it somewhere. You know, that's where that fallacy comes from. It's not getting that integrated view. But anyways, so there's these two. He says neither doctrine is either true or a necessary deduction from the premises. Now, I think those are synonyms. I think a necessary deduction from the premises is a truthhood. But the first school, assuming that there is no way of knowing other than by demonstration, maintain that an infinite regress is involved, on the ground that if behind the prior stands no primary, we could not know the posterior through the prior, because behind the prior is no primary, so we don't know the posterior. They basically end up saying, quote, wherein they are right, for one cannot traverse an infinite series. So that's one of the reasons you can't say that we have to explain everything back down. There has to be a base beyond which we don't have to explain, a base where we just point and say this, or whichever it is. There has to be a base because we cannot transverse an infinite series. You can't allow an infinite series to be between yourself and an explanation. If, on the other hand, they say, the series terminates, and there are primary premises, yet these are unknowable. Now, why are these primary premises unknowable? Actually, the sentence doesn't stop there, but the grammar is a bit hard because this is a very long run-on from way earlier. We've been in the same sentence for a few minutes here. But, so, why is that then? Why are these unknowable? Because incapable of demonstration. We can't demonstrate them, therefore they can't be known. Which, according to them, is the only form of knowledge. Demonstration is the only form of knowledge, and you can't demonstrate something, and therefore it's not knowable. Quote, and since thus one cannot know the primary premises, knowledge of the conclusions which follow from them is not pure scientific knowledge, nor properly knowing at all, but rests on the mere supposition that the premises are true. So they say you just set down these arbitrary axioms, and then you build science on that. And Aristotle here shows that he's just shown us the roots of that fallacy, hasn't he? Quote, the other party agree with them as regards knowing, holding that it is only possible by demonstration. But they see no difficulty in holding that all truths are demonstrated on the ground that demonstrations may be circular and reciprocal. So they get out of it by saying we're okay with a circular or reciprocal demonstration. Now Aristotle breaks paragraph here. Our own doctrine is that not all knowledge is demonstrative. On the contrary, knowledge of the immediate premises is independent of demonstration. You don't have to give a demonstration of the five senses. You don't have to demonstrate that reality exists. You don't have to demonstrate that you exist and that you're conscious of reality, and you don't have to demonstrate that things are what they are. It seems obvious, but you wouldn't, you know, if you were just an alien from another planet and came here and found out that there was massive disagreement about the axioms, you would be like, why? And even a person like myself is going to have to say, I'm not sure. I just don't know. Why do people not accept the axioms? I don't get it. There's no arguments against them because you have to use them in any argument. So I'm not sure. Boneheads? They just haven't thought hard enough about it? I don't know. So, knowledge of the immediate premises is independent of demonstration, cannot demonstrate the validity of the five senses. The necessity of this is obvious, for since we must know the prior premises from which the demonstration is drawn, and since the regress must end in immediate truths at some level, those truths must be indemonstrable. In other words, if we're trying to make a demonstration, we have to get to something that we can't make a demonstration of. Now that's, in science, that's where you get down to your hard physical facts, your hard physical evidence. You can say, I extrapolate this, and here's my mathematics of it, and I think through the mathematics it looks like such and such.